Here we go. First of all, a little bit of housekeeping. The screen that you're seeing right now is page 2. This is the cover page of a PDF that you should have received from Stephanie today. So what I'd like you to do is let me know, or actually in the chat box, it's probably going to be on the right-hand side of your screen, but in the chat box, go ahead and let Stephanie know what your email is if you have not yet received your PDF, because it is your workbook. And the purpose of today is twofold. One, I want to introduce you to this concept of how to use this futurist tool of foresight, how to apply it to your own life. But sort of the big bonus is, like, you've blocked out a little bit over an hour for us. You're going to actually have time to start thinking about and doing the work. I just did this a remote with some students at Oxford, Rhodes Scholars at Oxford. And, you know, these are academics, so they're a little arms crossed about life generally, and they're smart as hell. They're not all humble. I know that's shocking. So they started very arms crossed about like foresight and who's this futurist and woo-woo this and woo-woo that. And they didn't even have this nice PDF that DT just designed for us. And by the end of it, like, I could not get them to stop writing. So you're going to want to get yourself a copy of this PDF. You can certainly write in the PDF if you have that capability, if you have Acrobat Pro or whatever. But I printed mine out, and I'm going to take hard copy notes for myself. So get that. Steph, does it look like folks have it, and are you getting good, good, good? Okay, cool. So what is your future? I want to start by kind of getting to know you guys a little bit, why you're here, to just do some level setting, because it helps me know where to put my acupuncture needles as a facilitator. So we've got 2 polls so that I can kind of wrap my head around where you guys are starting. So Steph is going to load up poll 1. For us. The first poll, it's really quick, right? What's the primary reason you're attending today? And for some reason we couldn't do an other option on this, so you kind of have to choose one. So is it number 1, help? You know, I hope foresight can help me navigate my future. Like, maybe you're in a little bit of a crisis, and you're not a crisis, but like, it's big. 2 is more of like a curiosity, like I'm a little bit intrigued. And the third option is Futurist Camp is next month at Camp Wandawega, and we know that some of you are logging on to kind of get steeped in some of the stuff that we're going to be doing. So we'll give you just a few more seconds to close out the poll. And then we can kind of get a benchmark of where you guys are. So I'm going to count it down from 5, Steph, and then close that poll. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The poll is closing, and now Steph is going to broadcast our, okay, so more than half of you are intrigued, and we have at least probably 2 or 3 campers on, and then we have a couple people in crisis. Okay, so first of all, for you people who are like, it's going to be okay. This is a cool tool, it's an important tool, and you're probably not going to, you are going to want to take maybe an hour or 2 more hours with this tool to get it done. I know I got to bring the thing back up, but this will help you. And for those of you who are in the curiosity category or in the camp category, you're going to have enough today. It's going to be enough for you to kind of get your feet wet and kind of get going. So the first thing I want to encourage you to do is reach for your caffeine. Step 0 of this multi-step process, science tells us that caffeine helps us focus and concentrate. And it's noon where I live. It's 11, 1, 2 where some of you live, 10 for some of you. So if you have your Diet Coke or your caffeine of choice, go for it. I know, Babs, if you're on, I know you've got a tab, girl. I know you're drinking a tab. So you do want to get in the mindset of concentrating. So whether you caffeinate or not, this is going to take a little bit of time. So what I'm really going to try to do for you is there's going to be a lot of silence on this webcast when you're going to be working on some things. And I'm just going to use my best intuition with how much time this is going to take for some of you to get through this. We'll also have the chat box open, so if you have specific questions that you want to ask, you can put them in the chat and we'll respond to those during the parts when you guys are doing some of these steps. The other thing that I want to warn you of up front is you know, I'm going to walk you through all the steps, but there are a couple of steps that are going to take far longer, should take longer than we're allowing you time for. And that's where some of the real juice is. So this is an introduction, but you've got the guide. I also have a corresponding blog post on how I applied this to my own life. We'll email that out to you afterwards if you don't already have it. So this is not a small deal. You know, when you're trying to plan the future of your own life, you're trying to use forecasting in your own life, you should want to make the time for this. You know, you sit in traffic, the average American sits in traffic 24 minutes one way every day, right? So in an average week, that's what, 50 times 5, that's 250 minutes of sitting in traffic every week. If you just give 250 minutes to this, your life could be significantly different, and in a good way, and in a way that you're prepared. So what is your future? How are we going to apply foresight to your life? Here we go. Step 0 was to caffeinate. The first step is to frame your domain. Now this is like a futuristic-y term. These are the actual terms from foresight, to frame your domain. But what it means for you is a domain is like, it's an area of focus. And obviously your life is the area of focus. So what we want to do in this case is say, all right, for me, I was like, all right, the future of Rebecca Ryan's life, and then I chose a year marker. And I'm going to ask you to do this sort of intentionally, right? So think about the stage of life that you're in. I know that if Erin's on the call today, she just had a baby. Right? And those first few years of having a toddler and starting a new job and having just finished a graduate program, it's going to be chaotic, right? So maybe you want to look at a 3-year time horizon. If Shai is on the call, I know that you know, she's got a son who in the next 4 years is going to be getting his driver's license if he wants to. And that's going to change your life quite a bit. And Shai has just recently started a consulting business, right? So for my domain, what I was thoughtful about were 2 things, my personal life and my career. And I was in a point, when I did this last year, I was at a point when I was 43 at the time that I did this, and the person I was very seriously dating and was probably going to marry, and in fact we just did get engaged last month, she is 10 years older than I am. And so I was like, all right, Lauren is probably going to retire at the age of 65. I will be 54. So I felt like I've got 10 years for my career and 10 years until my partner retires, and then my life is going to be different again. I'll have to do this again. So I chose a 10-year time horizon for myself. So what I'd like you to do now is take a minute. I keep going backwards instead of forwards, I'm sorry, is to take a minute and actually frame this up for yourself, right? So this is your life by what year, right? So your domain would be written, you know, in the 3rd person or in the 1st person, you know, the future of my life by 2023 or whatever it is for you. But make sure that the domain matters. And in fact, for those of you who are working ahead a little bit, I would love it if in the chat box you would just tell us what your domain is. So in the chat, type your message in if you feel comfortable, right? Type it in so that we get a sense of what you're doing. This is one way we can make the distance a little shorter. I'll put mine in while you guys are framing that. If you don't want to share your domain, what I would ask you to do in the chat is just to say when you're done with this step, when you've kind of written it out for yourself, and just literally see how I'm doing this. I'm chatting done to all. Oh, yeah, right on. Okay, sorry. Steph just showed me that you guys are putting this in questions. Oh, good. You guys are doing a great job. Okay. Good. Okay. Fantastic. Well done. All right, so what is the next step? You've framed your domain. So this is really, literally think about this, like these are the hard edges that you're thinking about. So then when you go to the next step, this is where you have to really be a brainstormer, right? This is where you want to get really wild and creative and think of it like the top of a funnel, because what we want to do is we want to identify all the possible trends and forces that could influence your domain and think as wild and crazy as we can. So, and these should be actual things. So in the chat box right now, what I'm going to do is I want to show you, Stephanie, can they all see the chat box if I write stuff in the chat box? They can't. Okay. Come again?
Yes, if you say it to all audience.
Yeah, so I'm doing it to all. Okay. Sorry for the slight technical difficulties. We just signed up for this version of this, and there are a couple of nuances that I haven't quite mastered. So again, remember I told you you're going to get what you pay for here with your money, but I know your time is valuable too. Okay, so anyway, back to this free webcast to help you frame the future of your life. In this step, what you want to do is you want to start thinking about all the things that are real. These aren't opinions. These are real things that are going to affect your life. So why don't you just jot this down? These are the categories of things I would encourage you to think about. I want you to think about trends in your family, right? So by the time, 6 years from now rolls around, Kristen Baki, like, how is your family life going to be different? Maybe you're going to be retiring, right? Or what's going to be different with your partner or with your children, right? What do we know for sure about what's happening with your family? Here's a second category is your own physical health or well-being. Like, I'm in my 40s now, and what I have learned from the last 2 years is I get injured more easily because of the sports I continue to play, and it takes me a long time to recover. So this is a fact that I have got to factor in to my plausible futures, right? Third category to think about whether things are increasing or decreasing, or what are the anticipated trends that you're going to see in your career. What's happening at work? Right? Do you anticipate more business or less business? Is your company expanding? Are your responsibilities expanding, or are they decreasing? Are they changing in some way? Fourth category, your finances. What's the future of your finances? Are you in a situation where your income is continuing to increase? Statistically, we know that people in their 40s and 50s are in their peak earning years. So be thoughtful about that, right? Wherever you are in your life stage, what's your financial picture? Around your household income. And spirituality might be a fifth category that you think about. Like, what are the trends that you're, addressing in your spiritual life? So we sort of have several of the aspects, the relational aspects of your life, the financial aspect of your life, the career and vocational aspects of your life, the spiritual aspects of your life. And now it's time to get these out. Now we've got two methods for you to do this. One method is the sort of creative, mind map way. So how can you mind map all this out in a way that is super creative? And this is a place where if you want to use colored pencils, you should go for it, right? But then there's another way for those of you who, so here's a place where you could draw your mind map there on page 8. But then if you're a listy kind of a person, we give you pages 9 and 10 to list the trends that are going to impact your life over these next few years. So I'm going to give you like 3 to 4 minutes. I'm going to shut up, and I'm going to let you kind of start listing these trends, getting this big brainstorm together, and I will put the 5 areas in the chat section so that you can see it. Shai asked a good question about, should I be doing these trends based on kind of where where I want to be, or like where I am? And we're getting to where you want to go. You have an idea in mind probably of your preferred future, but for right now, ground yourself in the actual trends that are current and real and objective that are happening now through the next, through the period of your domain. So all we're trying to do right now is gather factual trends that are going to impact your life in the coming years? That's a good question. Okay, so it's been about 4 minutes. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to go like geek on you for just a second, because what I'd like you to do is take a look at your trends, whether they're on, configured on your mind map or whether they're on a list. And what I'd like you to do is think about this XY diagram. So this is page 11 of your handout. And I just want you to plot these out based on the x-axis, the horizontal axis. How big or little of an impact is this going to have on your life, right? So you look at these trends, how major or minor of an impact, and then I also want you to sort them based on how certain you are that they're going to happen, right? So, maybe you said, increase in personal wealth or personal income from $90,000 to $110,000, whatever it is, right? How certain are you, and how big of an impact is that going to have on your life? So on this page, I'm going to give you a couple minutes to get some of these trends down on your map. And then when you're ready, I want you to tell me where on this map most of your trends are. And maybe they're equally distributed, maybe they're mostly in the middle, maybe they're all in the up, one or another quadrant. So get them all on here based on impact and certainty, and then let us know in the Q&A box how they showed up for you. Okay, so we'll give you, let's say, 3 minutes for this. Okay, we're starting to get a few of you who are telling us where your where your trends ended up. Bridget, mine were in the same place as yours. Mine were mostly in the center and then in the right. I didn't have any in the far left third of like minor impact on my life. None of those. Okay, Emily, all we're in the top right section. Don't freak out, girl. That's why we're here. It's okay. You're going to be all right. You're going to be all right. We are in this together. Brian, center right and upper right. Yep, that's this. This is interesting. Okay, Susan. Yep. All right. So far there seems to be some consensus about where these are showing up. Let's just give the rest of the folks another minute. Those of you who are done, you can skip ahead if you want to, and we'll catch up with you in just a second. But I want to see, okay, center right-ish. Deborah, middle to upper right. Hey, Deborah. Okay, good. We have a few more people who are still telling us where things. Okay, good. All right. I think we've got just a couple more coming in. Okay. So you guys are doing an absolutely fantastic job so far. Awesome. Okay, good. All right. So I think just about everyone is done. So we're going to go with the majority here, and we're going to move on to the next section. Now, when we do step 3, we're going to do something on our end to unmute all of your phones. So what that means is when Stephanie unmutes all of your phones, if you are also playing some Led Zeppelin in the office, or if there is a train going by, everyone is going to hear it unless you take charge and mute your own phone. This is 2016. I think you all know how to mute your own phone. As an act of prevention, you may want to put your phone on mute right now before Stephanie unmutes you, especially if you have a screaming infant or anything else that would make our ears bleed. I'm wearing earbuds, so it is really going to impact me. But we're going to go to step 3, and the reason I want the phones unmuted is because I want to give you guys an opportunity to ask questions here. So step 3 is this, right? What I'd like you to do is start to design plausible future scenarios for yourself, right? So, for example, I looked at my own trends. I already shared some of them with you, like I'm not recovering as quickly from injury. There are some spiritual trends that are happening in my life right now that I'm pretty excited about, but I'm not really diligent about them. Like I'm a Zen student, and just as an example, like I know my life works a little bit better when I sit every day, but I don't always sit. I seem to always find a reason to not sit very often, right? So there are some things that I can dial up or dial down. But what we want to do with these plausible scenarios is we want to actually imagine things that could happen to you in your life. And I call these, futurists call these outside-in forces. Like, what are some things that could happen to you? They could be positive, like Shy, if you and Brian got a huge new client, that would be a very positive, plausible future scenario. So, or something terrible could happen. We know that once you hit the age of 60, the incidence of needing long-term care, you fall, you break your leg, and you end up having to, be in a care facility for a while you're rehabilitating. Or as we get older, something happens to our parents, and we've got to take care of our parents. That's what you might call a quote-unquote negative disruption. But what we want to start to do in step 3 is to imagine plausible, that it can't be aliens landing from outer space, plausible factors that could influence our futures. And I'm going to ask you to choose, just for the purpose of this first scenario for yourself, I want you to choose one of 3 scenarios. You can choose a positive disruption, something that you'd be like, yes! Like when I did mine, the plausible disruption was if my TED talk blew up. You know, if like somehow I reached Brene Brown levels of like TEDxness, right? So that was my positive disruption. The second option for you to design a little story around for the future of your life is a negative disruption. So like what could go wrong? For myself, I picked, you know, a downturn in the economy that would impact my business because I had just been there, done that, got the t-shirt during the Great Recession, and I could imagine that it could happen again, right? And then what would the impact be? And the third option that you have for this scenario for your own life is a watch and wait scenario. So if you don't do anything to respond to the current trends impacting your life, and you've got them all mapped on the previous page on that XY diagram, what could your life be like in the time frame that you've selected? So your phones are off of mute right now. I mean, you have them muted, but your phones are off of mute right now. And I just want to see if there are any questions, because if you're having a question about this step, because things are starting to get harder now, if you're having a question about this step, other people are having questions as well. So it sounds like somebody took their phone off mute. What's the question? Oh, no, that was just Stephanie taking everybody's phone off mute. My bad. So if you have a question about the scenarios, again, the options are a positive disruption, a negative disruption, or a watch and wait. Like you're not going to do anything to respond to the trends in your life. You're just going to kind of keep doing what you've always done. I'm going to give you, I'm going to say 10 minutes for this. And you want to write this in as much detail as possible. So if it's a positive disruption, describe the details of it. When does it happen? How does it happen? Who does it impact? Same thing with the negative disruption. You want to make this really juicy. Like when I did mine, I used yellow legal paper, and I did 4 scenarios for myself, and they were each like 3 pages long. So right now what I want you to do is just write and write and write what that scenario could look like in your life in the coming years. And Stephanie, let's put everybody back on mute. I'm gonna just cover my camera because I feel weird looking at you while you're writing your scenarios, so I'll be back in a few minutes. Hey guys, it's Rebecca. If you get done early, like you're like, I've done as much as I can on this scenario, move to another one. So if you chose a negative disruption, choose a positive disruption or vice versa. Because what you want to do is create several plausible futures for yourself. That's the goal. But get through as many as you can. Okay, this is your 2-minute warning. We'll finish this section up in about 2 minutes. Use your time wisely. Try to either flesh out, make more alive that scenario you're working on, or start on your next one and bring that one to life. 2 minutes. All right. Um, this is where the distance gets hard because I would love to just be able to do like a quick check-in around the room. Why don't we try it? All I'm going to ask is if you chose a negative, a positive, or a watch and wait scenario to kind of blow out. And I think what I'll do is I'm just going to come around and do this alphabetically by first name. So again, the question is just simply, take yourself off mute, and we just want to know if you did a negative disruption, a positive disruption, a watch and wait disruption, if you did more than one. I don't need to know what the story was. I'm just interested in kind of what you chose. So Alyssa, you're up first. Alyssa? Oh, she doesn't have a mic. Okay, no problem. Amy Lynch, how about you? Steph, it looks on our end like she's still muted.
Can you hear me now?
There you go, Amy.
Hi. Hi, sorry,
Amy.
I had to figure that out. Well, it was fascinating. When I did the positive disruptors and followed them to their end, there were both ups and downs. There were good sides and bad sides. So that was an insight for me.
Well done. Good, good. Okay, Brent, let's come to you. Brent Stockwell, our buddy in Arizona. What did you choose, positive or negative, or? Also no mic, Steph? Okay, no problem. This might not have been the best idea. I'm sorry for you guys that we don't have you mic'd up and aren't ready to go. Brian.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I started with the watch and wait scenario first, but did manage to move on to negative and positive. And like the previous person, yeah, it was interesting. Some things can kind of play out. I mean, positive, negative disruption. Again, you didn't want to know our story, but potential of having children could be viewed as a positive disruption. But my friends who do have children, they may have some negative things to say. So yeah, there are those trade-offs with any scenario, I suppose. So it's very interesting.
Good. Okay, I'm glad first of all, you plowed through 3 scenarios, which for those of you who are like feeling like underachievers, Brian used to work in Hollywood, so he knows how to storyboard with the best of them, so don't feel bad if you were only able to get through 1. Bridget, let's come to you. Positive disruption, negative disruption, all of the above. Oh, I'm getting that gray bar. Okay. Deborah, can we hear you? Yes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, well, it's interesting because I started with a very positive one, started to work on a negative one, but noted that I got into, when I was writing my positive one, I got into all these if-then scenarios. So it was like, okay, so this positive thing happens and this other thing might happen and what, so I had sort of like trouble stopping.
Right. It's like a choose your own adventure, the fork in the road. Yeah. Good. Thanks, Deborah. Emily Bradley.
Hi, Rebecca.
Hi, Emily.
So mine was a positive, and I'm kind of the same thing as the last response, but I found myself saying this would be a positive, but then here's some of the negatives that could come from that, and I was trying to stay in a positive mode. I didn't want to get kind of into that negative path, but the positive was really, I think, what was resonating during the exercise right now.
Cool. And what you guys have noticed, all of you who have done these positive scenarios, and this is very common, is these negative things happen. One of my clients is Charleston, South Carolina, and when Boeing announced they were bringing 6,000 engineering jobs to Charleston, champagne for everybody, and then 6,000 families started moving to Charleston, and it was something else. So often, even these positive disruptions have negative consequences, and the reverse is also true. So, Karen, what did you notice or which disruptions did you choose? Karen has got the cross on her phone. There we go. Karen Thorson.
Hey, Rebecca.
Hey, Karen.
I only got to join when you started doing the scenario, so I'm just listening in. But I am thinking about trends and how I'm going to try this after the webinar. Thanks for doing it.
Absolutely. I was actually thinking when I saw you on the list, I was thinking about you and Augie, and that would be a very interesting set of scenarios to run. So,
oh my goodness.
Yes, absolutely. Very good. All right, we're going to go from Arizona, where Karen and Brent are, all the way over to the Space Coast, where Kristen Bakke is joining us. Kristen, did you choose positive, negative? What did you do? We can't quite hear you yet, girl. We can see your green microphone, but we can't hear you. Okay, we're going to pretend that Kristen had an emergency call. Megan Tripp.
I was working on the positive disruption. I think I've been kind of stuck in the watch and wait zone for a while, so wanted to explore a different future scenario.
That's what this is for. Well done. Good use of your time. How about Rebecca Gilliam? Nope. Gray box on the microphone. All that means is, you know, they're not tuning in with their computer, which is perfectly fine. Shai Roos on the phone. I imagine you tried to do all three, Shai.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So I, of course, chose positive and could not think beyond the positive.
Well played. Shai is our resident glass half full person. Several of you are going to be at camp. I can't wait for you guys to all meet each other. It's going to be fantastic. Good. Stacy, our palette, sustained Dane. Positive, negative, watch and wait. Stacy, we can hear you keystroking. All right, we'll go to our final person on the call. Susan Seaman. I see that her phone is gray, which means she's not going to be able to give us any audio on this. So you guys have already discovered, you know, anytime you run scenarios, you've discovered sort of the flip-flop of things, right? When you do a positive disruption, you also often have a lot of negative outcome. When you do a negative disruption, I'm going to strongly encourage you to choose a negative disruption maybe as your next one, because you know, as I mentioned, in my negative disruption, I chose another economic collapse and then what was going to happen with the business. And the truth was that the negative disruption had more hope for me than even the positive disruption did. And we're going to talk about why in the next step. But the next step, which we've called step 4, it should probably really be called step 3B. There are a few modifications we're going to make to this handout as we continue to do this work. You guys, by the way, are my beta tests because I've been asked to lead a foresight in your own life to a bunch of women who serve in public office and in the public sector. I'm going to do that in North Carolina in September. So any feedback you have about this would be fantastic. But you know, what we want to do next is we want to think about contrasting your scenarios and looking at, all right, what are the things that you could turn up or turn down in your life that would help you manage in any one of those situations. So if you were going to run through this whole thing and give it the appropriate amount of time, I would say that now is the time you want to like stretch. You know what? Do it if you can. If you're at a place where you can get up, like I'm at a stand-up desk right now, just do a little stretching, because this is I found this next section to require a lot of brain power. And so here's what we're going to do. For those of you who are thinking about your current life, like one of you mentioned, I'm sort of stuck in watch and wait, which is why I chose a disruption. I want you to think about this scenario that you just drew out. And I want you to think about what are things that you can control that could make the positive scenario even more positive, or the negative scenario less negative, right? So I'm going to give you a couple minutes to just brainstorm this out. And I think these are things, again, that you control. We can't control the outside-in forces, but these are the inside-out forces, the things that we control, and we can act on the world that start from the inside. We exert them outward, that you control. So what are the levers that you can control that could impact your future scenario? So I'll give you a couple minutes to just brainstorm this. for me, when I did 4 scenarios for myself, as I mentioned, and it took me, it took me like 3 or 4 hours to do this whole process, and I did it over 2 days because I didn't have 3 or 4 hours to begin. But my common levers, and because this is, this is personal planning for your own life, like one of the levers that got turned up or down that would be on my list here was the quality of my friendships. And I'll give you the example. In my positive disruption, which I thought was my TED Talk blowing up, like that would be a really positive disruption, what I realized was, because I work with my friends, and what I realized was if our friendships weren't strong, they would not, work could turn into a quagmire of just busyness. And without having these strong and honest friendships, we could go running off in some directions that just wouldn't be good, right? And then I looked at my negative disruption, losing the business or having a huge economic setback, and I realized, like, I would mostly be okay as long as I had a support system. But my watch and wait was, just kind of business as usual, which is always more, faster, adding, and it's always my personal relationships that get squeezed out. And my watch and wait scenario was not cute at all. So when I started thinking about something going really well, something going really poorly, my watch and wait scenario, I realized, like, I have to spend more time with people that I really love, because they are my best insurance against whatever life throws at me. So that was one of the things that I realized. And I also, realized that I had to start making some different decisions in my personal life around how I exercise, what I eat, because my metabolism is slowing down as I'm getting older. It's harder for me to come back from from injuries and so forth. So I needed to really, kind of have my game on there. So this is what we're doing here is, identifying these levers. And I know that somebody just asked, like, give me an example of a lever. And those are the things I'm talking about. So, like, my levers were things like whether I'm sitting zazen. Because if I'm sitting zazen, sitting meditation, even if life gets crazy, a really positive disruption, I'm still centered, I'm still making decisions. And of course, in a negative disruption, it's keeping me centered and not, overreacting. Quality of my personal relationships was another one. How I was maintaining my health was another one. And what this exercise really did for me was it made me realize, like, these levers that I control will make me ready for anything. If it's a negative disruption, if it's a positive disruption, if it's, watch and wait, which is untenable to me, but if it was a watch and wait scenario. The final scenario I did, by the way, and we're going to send you this list as a follow-up. And we'll probably send you a couple of emails too to just prompt you to finish this exercise for yourself. But, so that we're throwing down the challenge for you to finish this for yourself. But going through this process was like acupuncture for my personal life. It was like, these are the things I need to do regardless of what happens, from the outside. These are the things I have control over. And it really helped me reprioritize some things that I had been taking for granted. I'll give you an example, Amy, of a lever that came out of the Oxford group. These Rhodes Scholars are a bunch of brainiac. Like, it's a nerd circus over there at the Rhodes House, and so these are people who are working on, like, their MD degrees, in vector pathogen, things I don't even understand, right? And so we asked the group to share, like, what are some of the levers that emerged for you. And maybe we'll do this. We'll open up the lines here in a minute and you guys can share if you feel comfortable. But one of the things that the roadies said, and this is a person who I would think could write her own ticket. She's brilliant. She said, what I just realized from doing this exercise is I am an introvert. I do not like to network. She goes, but if I do not network, I am going to get stuck in a job I'm going to hate. And that was huge for her to realize, she had some control over the quality of her job, even though her life has probably been pretty awesome to date in terms of the kinds of opportunities that have been open to her. So those are the kinds of things that emerge for her. So we've got about it's about 5 minutes to the hour. Let's go ahead and open up the lines, Stephanie, and anybody who would like to contribute, like a lever or ask a question about this part of the process, let's just have some open discussion. Anybody can jump in if they have anything to share.
Rebecca, this is fascinating. It's just fascinating. And I keep circling back to two big areas that I have control over. And one is my health, and the second is the products that I produce for the world. You know, it's huge. So thanks for this.
Yeah, you're welcome. And Amy Lynch, she's too humble to do it herself, and she lives in Nashville in the South, where you don't talk about yourself, your family does, behind your back. But Amy Lynch, one of America's foremost experts on the millennial generation, and is the person we refer everybody to when they're looking for somebody to talk about generations in the workplace and whatnot. So her company is Generation Edge, and she's fantastic. And I can't wait to see what kind of products you put in the world in light of this exercise. Good work. Who else? Anything to share about the levers that popped out of the scenarios so far?
And then email addresses and moves at different.
Rebecca,
I just think
Yeah, go ahead. Let's start with, there was a male's voice and then a female's voice. Let's start with the male's voice first.
Rebecca, this is Brian. I was just going to pick up on what you said earlier, because I think I see it in my lever situation as well, where it kind of challenges me to see that I maybe have more control over certain aspects of life. Maybe not complete control, but not such a passive passenger. Things like such as the lady before talking about, your health. It's easy to think that all these things overwhelm you and you just don't have time, and so that's why you didn't even bother to take a 10-minute walk. But gosh, if I could just eke out 10 minutes, do it consistently, that would have real benefits. So, anyway.
Yeah, good. Going from kind of passive to active. And, the thing about this is, most people start every year with some sort of a well-being goal, some kind of health and wellness goal, because you know that you need to do it. And you're arriving at a similar conclusion by going through this exercise. But gosh, when you start playing this out in the domain, right, in the 5 years or the 10 years, that's like compound interest. So that's fantastic. And now there was also a female voice, I think, right after yours, Brian. Who was that?
that was me, Shai.
Hey, Shai.
So I realized in my scenarios, learning to say no to things is very important. If I can just stop doing things that are not important, that do not get me to that I actually don't even want to do, if I can learn to do that, that would be great. I think everything would turn out, even in a disruption scenario, it won't go too downhill if I could just not do the things for people that I seem to have an incapability of saying no to.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, saying no is something you totally have control over. And Shai, this is not the first time we've talked about that. I got you, girl. Good. What else? What else?
Can I hop in? It's Deborah.
Deborah, bring it.
Before I was like talking to my muted microphone, like very hard and heavy, which was hysterical. First I'm stealing Shai's. Learn to say no. Hell yes. Excuse me. The other part is and it can be the smallest thing, is clean as I go, and that means like picking up after myself, like taking the glass to the sink, something that simple, but also like in terms of my relationships, making sure that I'm maintaining stuff at the right level. And some of the products, my big scenario was my husband's art career taking off and having more time and doing great stuff with that. Well, that would give him more time to work, right? If we're all putting the dishes in the sink and putting our shoes where they go, he has more time to work, duh. I have more mental energy. My health is better because there's not dust everywhere. You know, if you take 10 seconds and squeeze you to shower when you're done, you're not cleaning for 2 hours on Saturday. And it's like the tiniest tweak, but I think it could just totally blow up everything. So
Awesome. Tell your husband that he's welcome.
I will.
That's fantastic. Well, we're coming up on the top of the hour, and this has been fantastic sharing. Thank you all for putting yourselves out there with respect to your own levers. So, you know, then what we do with this professional foresight process for our own life is once you've listed all these levers or these dials, I'm still trying to figure out what the language needs to be here. You guys have done a beautiful job of expressing what you chose your levers or your dials to be. I'm still trying to get but the idea is we can turn up or down some things that can impact whatever the external forces are that impact our future. So that's what we call them dials. We sometimes call them levers. I have a friend who's much older than me who said, stop using dials. Nobody uses dials anymore. Everything is buttons. But I like the idea of a dial. Anyway, what we then do is we take these lists of your dials or your levers, and then we say, what would ridiculous success look like in each of these areas? So the specific question might be something like, for myself, it's 2027. I think that was the domain year I chose. It's 2027, I'm 53 years old, 54 years old, and in this area, my life looks outrageously successful because, and I fill in this like very specific, juicy, illustrative example, right? So for me, in like my Zazen and my sitting Zazen, outrageous success looks like I am sitting Zazen every day in the same way that I'm brushing my teeth every day. It is just a hygiene factor. I don't think about it. I don't plan for it. I don't get planful about it. It's just something I do every single day, right? So that's what outrageous success would look like. It's not a big thing. It's a small thing, but that's what outrageous. So you'll go through each one of these levers, each one of these dials, and you say, outrageous success by this year in my future would look like this. So that's what really setting your vision is, right? That is what it looks like to, let me advance, to set your vision for yourself. And then, so your vision is really your preferred future, right? It's your preferred future in these areas that you can control so that you're ready for anything, whatever life brings. So let's actually do that. Like, let's take a minute to ask ourselves what, you know, audacious success could look like. Just jot down a few ideas that match up with these levers. We'll take a couple minutes for this, maybe 2 minutes, okay? And I'm going to do a little stretching because my back hurts, so I'm going to awesome. I'm sorry to truncate this because I know some of you are like just getting into it. So you get a sense of how much life and energy this gives to focus on what these levers are that could impact any future, any plausible future. And then of course, you know, after you've identified your vision, then what you want to do is get your plan together. But the way that futurists do this is not the way that everyone else does this. So for a futurist, we don't plan from today forward. Of course, we're futurists. We plan from the future and we backcast. So what you just did in step 5 was you said my vision for outrageous success in the end year of the domain that I framed is this. So then you start to backcast and say, all right, if that's what it looks like in, for myself, 2027, what does it need to look like in 2025? And what does it need to look like in 2023? And you backcast to today. And you still end up with your plan, right? The difference is your starting point, your ending point. And as you're doing this planning, try to bring as much richness to this as possible. I mean, there's a reason that some people recommend vision boards. I use them too. I think sometimes they can be a little bit hokey. But one of the reasons we love doing scenario planning as futurists is because it gives you an HD vision of what these possible, plausible futures could be. So don't be afraid as you're doing your backcasting, your planning, from the future to today, to create this robust scenario, because you're going to end up with plans in all of these lever areas, or some of them, the ones that you prioritize, right? So let that plan look full color and look HD. And then the final step is to, okay, take some action. So, you know, Brian, maybe you don't start with a 10-minute walk. You know, maybe you start with just taking the stairs the next building you go to, or, you know, not parking closest to the door at the next place you go to, right? So be gentle with yourself on this, but get started. The universe does truly reward action. And I don't know if this is the same for you, but what I have found for myself, this is a little meta, but what I've found for myself is when I start to take action towards something, I feel like the universe usually gives me a check on it. You know, like, I have a friend recently who is trying very hard to reshape her relationship with her kids. And she is moving out of her house, which she shares with her daughter, and her daughter's in her 20s, so she's trying to spring her daughter. She's changing her living situation. She has set up some clear boundaries with her kids. And of course, like the next day, within a week, one of her kids gets in some pretty big time trouble. And all of her buttons get like reset, right? Like, oh, now I'm gonna have to go to this and be the rescuer and, you know, do all these things. I was like, hey, I think this is the universe actually just testing your resolve. So don't assume that once you start acting and if you get checked by the universe, it's like, oh, this isn't what I'm supposed to do. I actually think the universe is trying to say, do you mean it? You know, Shai, the first time you say no and somebody throws a piss fit about it, that doesn't mean you should stop saying no. That means the universe is trying to test whether you're serious or not. That's just that's one woman's interpretation of this. So this is the recap of all the steps, and I'm going to leave this slide up. We're going to open the phones again, and I know we only have a few more minutes, but I'd love to take any questions that you have about the process or any requests you have for tools. And by the way, Bridget gave a great idea in the question section. You know, I was saying like dials feel a little old school. She's like, what about sliders? That's what I'm going to use from now on, sliders. So thank you, Bridget, for that pro tip. So we're going to take your phones off mute, and you fire any questions that you might have about the process, and we'll take a few minutes for that before the closing bell.
It's Karen. Rebecca, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So this has been a great intro, and I'm just wondering if you could talk a little bit about camp that's coming up and how you're going to build on these ideas at camp.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep, I know. So Karen's going to be at camp, Brian's going to be at camp, Shai's going to be at camp. I don't know if anybody else who's on the call today is going to be at camp. Those are the... Megan is going to be there. Awesome. So Karen, what we were offering you today is the idea of foresight applied to the domain called you. But this is a very unique and special thing, this webcast that we've done today. This is not, as you know, our typical explanation of how to use foresight. So those of you who are coming to camp, we're asking everybody to bring a professional client challenge, a professional situation, a workplace project that you're working on that you want to apply the steps of foresight to. So at camp, you're going to learn kind of 4 big units. You know, this is the way I've been designing the curriculum. So the first one is, what is foresight? And you just got an overview of this 6 or 7 step process. So what is foresight? The second thing you're going to do is learn how to run an entire process from end to end. Everything from getting buy-in from stakeholders to how to be a rock star facilitator and like what can run off the rails. Like when you do a foresight process, as you can imagine, and you're having people design scenarios for the future, some stuff can go wrong. And so I'm going to bring everything I know about how to work with people and processes to make sure that that foresight process works for you. The third thing we're going to do at camp is we're going to learn how to use the scenarios, how to use the technology of story to really bring those scenarios to life. Because what I have found is, you know, when I'm working for a client and I'm doing foresight for them, if you can really turn those scenarios into believable and emotional experiences, people change. The idea for me is if you can change this, if you can help a client change their story of the future, the rest of it is easy, right? So we're going to learn master storytelling techniques. We've got some amazing resources in that component. And then we're going to learn some advanced foresight techniques. So you're going to get exposed to causal layered analysis. You're going to get exposed to some other tools that like NATO uses, some of the Fortune 500 companies use, some of the energy companies use as they are using foresight. My whole goal with camp, I don't think you guys know this, but like we set a goal this year that we were going to train 1,000 futurists in the next 3 years. And what's happening in August, next month, at camp is our first kind of go at this to get some people trained as futurists. So 4 big units to camp. Those are the 4. This is a teeny tiny taste of the first of the 4 units. Thanks for that softball question over the middle of the plate.
Thanks, Rebecca.
You're welcome. Are there any other questions? Or what are the other questions? Let me reword that. All right, well, we're going to send you the link to camp. If you're interested in coming, we still have a couple bunks left. That's right, top or bottom bunks. We have teepees, we have tree houses, we have it all. But we're also going to send you the prompts on you know, how to take this to the end for yourself. So thank you for participating in today's webcast on how to apply foresight to your own life. I hope that those of you who were like a help at the beginning are a little more settled in that, you know, there is a way to navigate through this stuff, and that I hope this process has been useful. Please email Steph or I with any feedback you have about how to make this better next time. Until then, go rock it. Onward!